Regular show. As its slogan reminds us, it's anything but.
What?
The brainchild of creator J.G. Quintel, Regular Show dominated Cartoon Network alongside Adventure Time in the Amazing World of Gumball for nearly all of its runtime due to its bizarre stories, interesting cast of characters, and all-around hilarious writing. The world of talking blue jays, raccoons, lollipops, and gumball machines spans the whole spectrum of morality, and it's our job to figure out which characters are the most good, which ones are the most evil, and which ones are somewhere in between. I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and this is Regular Show Good to Evil.
Let's bowl.
And before we get started, there are a couple things to know. As there are literally hundreds of one-off side characters and villains, we couldn't include everyone on the list. We have included all major characters and recurring characters that appear in multiple episodes with speaking roles, plus a few fan favorites. We're going to include personality and actions throughout the entire series as factors for our ranking, though the stakes of the series did grow exponentially in the final season. With that said, let's begin our countdown. As usual, we'll be starting with the most pure and working our way down. These characters are the good, and the gold medal of good goes to Pops Mallard. This one wasn't a hard decision at all. He's literally the embodiment of pure good. From the earliest episodes, it's shown that Pops is an incredibly kind man who is always in a jolly mood. He doesn't seem to mind all of Mordecai and Rigby's slacking off, and even participates in some of their schemes, like their attempt to make a viral video and the episode go viral. Pops would never harm anyone on purpose, and he's incredibly patient with everyone in the park. There are a couple of times when Pops causes a bit of trouble, like forcing Benson to hold in his anger in the episode Think Positive, which almost results in the destruction of the park. But nearly all of those instances are a result of his pure, childlike nature and his desire for everyone to be happy and get along. He also goes through great lengths to help his friends and save them from danger, like when he beats the star wrestlers in Really Real Wrestling to save Mordecai and Rigby. As the chosen one, Pops is destined to battle his brother, Anti-Pops, to save the universe. However, we learn from Earl that this battle has occurred multiple times, with each one resulting in a punch so powerful that the universe resets itself. Pops then decides that the only way to truly win is to kill him with kindness. Pops embraces his brother in an unbreakable hug and sacrifices himself so that the universe can stay intact. And he even makes Anti-Pops realize the error of his ways at the last minute. If ever there was a pure character in the show, Pops is certainly it. Just don't ask to borrow money from him because you probably won't get what you're looking for. The silver medal of good goes to Skips. This stoic yeti has been working at the park for longer than anyone else. He's immortal and as a result is wiser and more knowledgeable than all of the characters combined. Mordecai and Rigby almost always turn to him for advice on the situations they get themselves in. Normally he knows what to do, but on the rare occasion that he doesn't, he still tries to help, even if it's not an issue he's familiar with, like computers. In the episode Skip's Story, we learn that Skips was not always the wise sage we see today. Back in high school, he was known as Walks, and he had been expelled from several schools for starting fights. Unfortunately, he gets into a scuffle with the school bully, Clorkbane, almost immediately upon arriving at his new school. When the fight is broken up by the headmaster, Clorkbane vows to finish what he started. Walks then meets and falls in love with a girl named Mona, and he even promises never to fight again to prove his love for her. But he's unable to keep that promise when prom rolls around. Clorkbane returns and loses to Walks, but Mona is killed during the battle by accident. Dejected, Walks tries to go on with his life, but the Guardians of Eternal Youth explain that Clorkbane will return and offer Walks immortality so that he can protect the world from the Destroyer's wrath. Walks accepts and adopts the new name Skips in memory of how he and Mona used to skip whenever they were together, and he's been staying true to his name ever since. If you think about it, Skips has one of the biggest personal burdens in the entire show. He will outlive all of his loved ones and see each one of them die for the rest of time. But he already chooses to live this way because he already lost his one and believes that this is his duty to the world. Skips obviously isn't perfect. Besides his sordid past, there was that time when he accidentally killed Rigby in a game of arm wrestling, but he rectifies this by arm wrestling death himself and winning back Rigby's soul. In the end, Skips is incredibly sympathetic, dependable, and voiced by Mark Hamill. Next, we're going to place Eileen Roberts. Eileen starts the series as a fairly timid side character with a noticeable crush on Rigby. She doesn't receive much spotlight in the earlier seasons, but we do see that she is very intelligent and kind to her friends. As her relationship with Rigby develops, we see more of her and dive deeper into her character. By season 8, she's a full-on protagonist on the quest to help Pops assume his role as the Chosen One. And she becomes a fearless warrior, a far cry from the shy coffee shop waitress that she started as. In the finale, we see that she and Rigby have settled down, raised a family together, and gotten the happy ending that they deserve. She must be a real saint to be able to put up with all of Rigby's shortcomings. Up next, we have Rigby's little brother, Don. He makes his first appearance in his self-titled episode where the park workers call him in to help them with an audit. He hits it off with everyone in the park. Rigby, however, is unhappy with Don's presence, which escalates and ends up with Don leaving the park after Rigby says he wishes Don was never born. Rigby goes to talk to Don after some convincing from Mordecai, and he explains why he's resented his younger brother since they were kids. Don always stole the spotlight whenever Rigby would hang out with his friends. He was considered way cooler than Rigby, and he was so tall that people believed Don was the older brother. Don, not realizing that he made Rigby feel this way, explains that he's been trying to be like Rigby his whole life because he thinks his big brother is the coolest one of all. The two reconcile, and Don returns to finish the audit. After saving the park, he appears again to help Rigby perfect his shot and win a bet in the episode Bank Shot. Don is charismatic, positive, and just an all-around great guy. Moving on, we have the baby ducks. Mordecai and Rigby initially find these ducklings while cleaning out the fountain, but they quickly take to following the duo around because they believe Rigby is their mother. True, they do kind of become jerks when they go around karate chopping everything in sight, but they're just babies. And Rigby is the one who taught them all that violent stuff in the first place. Later on, it's revealed that the ducks have the ability to go all Power Rangers and form the Hyper Duck, and they use their abilities in several battles to save Mordecai and Rigby, as well as the park and the entire world. Quite a feat for just a bunch of baby ducks. Back to some actual main characters, High Five Ghost is next. Of the 8 main characters, Fives has the least lines and least episodes centered around him. However, he's probably the nicest one of them all just after Pops. He's loyal to his best friend Muscleman to a fault, even when he's being a complete jerk, but Fives is rarely ever a jerk himself. He also seems to be good friends with Mordecai and Rigby, though they don't interact often. Interestingly, one of the scientists in the episode The Button determines that Fives is the most logical of all the park workers. He also seems to be pretty sensitive, as in the episode Trucker Hall of Fame, he's shown to not handle death or funerals very well, despite being a literal ghost. But all in all, Fives has a lot of positive character traits and is a good guy to have working at the park. Next on our list is Mordecai's first love interest, Margaret Smith. Margaret starts off as simply a kind, caring, and supportive friend to Mordecai, Rigby, and Eileen. As the series continued and her relationship with Mordecai grew, she became a much more developed character. Because Mordecai is really terrible at relationships, he takes far too long to actually start dating her, and by the time he decides to ask Margaret to be his girlfriend, she reveals the disheartening news. She has been accepted to her dream college and has to move away. Despite the distance, Margaret never stopped caring for Mordecai. Unfortunately, she gets caught in an awkward love triangle with CJ, but a large majority of the awkwardness is Mordecai's fault because of his own insecurities. She admits that she still has feelings for Mordecai while she and CJ are still dating, but both decide that they would be better off staying friends. Besides the weird romance, Margaret is shown to be a hard worker. We almost always see her working in the coffee shop until she goes to college, and she becomes a great reporter after finishing journalism school. Overall, she's a good person that cares for her loved ones. Next, we have the synth master Gary. Gary didn't make that great of a first impression in his debut episode Free Cake, where he appears on Earth to take skips to face the Guardians for not completing the ritual that keeps him immortal. However, it seems like Gary is under the command of the Guardians and probably didn't have a choice in the matter. In his next major appearance, he shows up to defend Mordecai and Rigby in Cool Court by arguing that they really aren't that cool. In the episode Gary's Synthesizer, we visit Gary's home planet of Synthos, where he's the rightful king. He defeats his tyrannical half-brother David in a synth battle and declares that the Synthesins will have no king, but will let music be their guide. Giving up his throne to free his people is certainly admirable, and I choose to believe that this is David Bowie's true origin story. A prominent Season 8 character, Pop's trainer Earl, is next. Every 14 billion years, Earl shows up to train Pops for his universe-shattering battle with Anti-Pops. Given the amount of tattoos on his body, we can assume this cycle has repeated itself dozens of times, making Earl immortal. Much like Mr. Miyagi of Karate Kid fame, his training methods seem fairly useless at first, folding laundry, making lemonade, and other menial tasks. But later on, we find out that Earl is the real deal, as he helps Pops hone his skills through the art of the training montage. Earl is rather short-tempered, especially when people question his skills or his training, but preparing the embodiment of pure good for a universe-scale fistfight probably puts a lot of pressure onto the old master. Because he fulfills his role in every cycle of the universe, we have to rank him among the good characters. The Guardians of obsolete formats are up next. These guys made their first appearance in the last Laserdisc player, where they serve as protectors of the titular object. They guard the old entertainment formats such as Betamax, floppy disk, and reel-to-reel, from the tyrannical newer formats like VHS, DVD, and streaming that seek to destroy the old ways. Though the format wars are not necessarily the most important battles of the whole series, it is a noble cause that the Guardians fight for. A moment of silence for those we lost during the battle with internet. Up next is dome scientist and hot wing lover Pam. Pam is one of the scientists in charge of documenting the park workers' behavior, but she hits it off with Benson rather quickly during their first interaction, showing that she views the workers as much more than just test subjects. The two of them begin dating, but when Dr. Langer finds out about their relationship, he prohibits dating the dome test subjects during the experiments. This doesn't stop Benson and Pam from trying to see each other, but before they can really start dating again, the park is sent into space. Pam contacts Benson stating that she doesn't think she can handle a long-distance relationship, and Benson doesn't take that very well. Thankfully, we see in the finale that she returns to Benson and rekindles their relationship, resulting in a happy marriage. Overall, Pam's a kind, caring, and loyal character, even if she's only appeared in a few episodes. We'd be remiss not to mention a figure as important as Father Time. Just based on his name, we can assume that he controls and maintains the time flow of the universe, but we get more personally acquainted with him in the episode It's Time, where he reprimands Mordecai for his jealous actions, resulting in him being stuck in the time dimension forever. Thankfully, he gives Mordecai a do-over to prevent this bad outcome. He shows up again in Regular Show the movie as a member of the Resistance against Mr. Ross and tells Rigby that he can prevent Ross's future by apologizing to Mordecai. Father Time has certainly prevented some bad futures for our characters, so he earns his place among the good. The man often seen guarding mystical objects, the Excellent Knight, is next. He is a very dutiful man who takes pride in being a keeper of whatever trophies he's guarding, from trucker hats to garage doors to VCRs. He's a bit inconsistent with offering help to the adventurers who seek his protected items, but he does his job well enough, even after seemingly dying in the episode Gamers Never Say Die. And at the tail end of the good section, we have the god of basketball. He makes his debut in the episode Slam Dunk, in which he vows to train Mordecai and Rigby to beat Muscle Man and High Five Ghost, in a pickup game of basketball, but our main duo turns out to be so awful at the game that the god of basketball decides to just grant them ultimate basketball powers. Since he essentially cheats, that knocks him down a few points, but when Muscle Man cheats in his own way, the god of basketball is forced to join his team and face off against Mordecai and Rigby. So we'll say that balances out his cheating. Besides that appearance, he's one of the fighters who shows up on the hero side in Exit 9B, proving that he is a good guy after all. And that's it for our decidedly good characters. Now we move into the gray area. First up, we have Dr. Langer. Langer brings the second coming of the Dome experiments to the park in the episode The Button. The Doctor initially appears to be a nasty, underhanded snake who attempts to steal Benson's job as park manager. However, as the season continues, we find out that there's much more going on with the Dome experiment. By the end of the season, Langer's actions are recontextualized as it's revealed that the experiment is actually preparation for the park's mission to space. Still, Langer doesn't get let off the hook completely. He bars scientists from dating test subjects because he's jealous that Pam decided to date Benson instead of him, forcing them to end their relationship before it could take off. That's a pretty crappy thing to do, even if it was in service of the space mission preparation. Mordecai's second love interest of the show, CJ, is next. After a series of unsuccessful attempts at online dating, Mordecai and CJ meet each other and hit it off almost immediately. At that point, we can see that she's very friendly and laid back, though not above the occasional tease or snide remark. It's when she finds out about Mordecai's past relationship with Margaret that problems arise. When she witnesses Mordecai offer to see a movie with Margaret that he initially asked CJ to, she erupts in a literal storm of anger until Mordecai admits that he only sees her as a friend. The two do eventually become boyfriend and girlfriend later on, but then the love triangle comes into play. In the episode 1000th Chopper Flight Party, we see her go into full hurricane mode over simple misunderstandings which almost get Mordecai, Margaret, and Margaret's parents killed. Seriously, does she rampage like this every time she's really upset? That would present a lot of danger to anyone nearby when she's in that emotional state. Aside from that, CJ does seem like a genuinely cool person to be around and a great friend to have, and obviously she deserved better than what she got from Mordecai. That said, I just can't ignore the fact that she has a tendency to become a cyclone of fury when she's angry. At least she acknowledges that it's a terrible thing whenever it happens, but she really should learn to control her anger. Come to think of it, anger management is a problem for several of the characters down the list. Speaking of which, let's talk about Benson. If one character is the physical representation of anger issues, Benson would be that character. For as often as he yells at Mordecai and Rigby for being irresponsible and threatens to fire them, it's really strange that he actually hasn't done it. Okay, he has tried a few times, but he always takes it back almost immediately after. In the episode Replaced, Benson did try to give Mordecai and Rigby's jobs to two more responsible workers. However, after some shenanigans involving a pizza party and lake monsters, the replacements tell Benson to shove off because the positions are terrible and no one would ever want to work at the park, leaving Benson no choice but to rehire Mordecai and Rigby, the only people actually willing to work there. Yet he fires Muscle Man in the episode Under the Hood for spray painting graffiti all over the place, even though he has no conclusive proof that Muscle Man actually did it. It seems as though he only keeps Mordecai and Rigby around for the purpose of unleashing his pent-up rage onto them. However, we have to admit that Benson is correct pretty much every time he calls them lazy slackers. For the majority of the show, Benson cares about one thing and one thing only: his job as park manager. We get a good idea of the extent to which he goes to perform his job well in episodes like Gold Watch and Busted Cart. In the latter episode, we see Benson in a much more sympathetic light. When he believes that Mordecai and Rigby have essentially cost him his job, he breaks down crying and claiming that the job is all he has in one of the most powerful scenes in the entire series. Combine that with the fact that his luck with relationships is worse than Mordecai's, and you really can't help but feel bad for the guy. Benson also has a much friendlier side when he's off the clock, as he enjoys activities like karaoke and going out for wings, although his enjoyment of wings borders on addiction. Now, we finally get to our protagonists, Mordecai and Rigby. We've decided to rank them together, and you'll know why soon enough. First off, Rigby definitely screws up more than Mordecai does. He's lazier, less responsible, and his immature antics tend to kickstart the plots of most of the episodes in the whole show. Even the first episode, The Power, happens because Rigby steals a magic keyboard from a wizard and starts using it to send stuff to the moon. But there is one area in which Rigby absolutely has Mordecai beat: relationships. Though he's dismissive and a bit of a jerk to Eileen when they first get to know each other, the two of them develop a healthy and substantial relationship naturally over time. Mordecai, on the other hand, can't seem to get over his own insecurities and anxieties regarding his love life. He tries to turn back time because his first kiss with Margaret is ruined by bad breath. He kisses Margaret again while still dating CJ during a Christmas party, and let's not forget that he kills Rigby out of jealousy in It's Time. Sure, Rigby's actions in that episode were kind of petty, but he just wanted to see a movie with his best friend, and then he gets killed for it. Because these two share the majority of their screen time together, we get a feel for both of their personalities and how they bounce off of each other. And a big part of that is their shortcomings. They're flawed in different ways, but you can't really say one is worse than the other. There are episodes like Grilled Cheese Deluxe where Mordecai and Rigby both try to outlie each other, which leads to the two of them almost destroying the city with antimatter. In the movie, Rigby is clearly in the wrong for forging Mordecai's rejection letter from college university, but future Mordecai even admits to his past self that being angry at Rigby was no reason to side with Mr. Ross and effectively destroy the world. Well, I think we've talked about their flaws enough, so let's talk about some of their positive character traits, shall we? Both Mordecai and Rigby usually take responsibility for their mistakes and work to rectify them in almost every episode. They're also shown to care about their friends a great deal, as they know exactly how to jog the memories of all the park workers in Exit 9B, and remind them of who they truly are. Though they're pretty lazy and their actions sometimes result in its destruction, they seem to truly care about the park, as they participate in several battles to save their workplace and home, such as in the episodes Exit 9B, Prankless, and a bunch of full-grown geese. We could analyze and discuss these two characters for hours, but let's just say that while they're heavily flawed at the start of the show, they do grow as characters and develop a sense of responsibility in later seasons. And the last of the main park workers, we have Muscle Man. Muscle Man is many things: former bodybuilder, teller of bad jokes, and the best pranker in the entire galaxy. He's shown to care very deeply about his girlfriend and eventual wife, Starla, his best friend, Fives, and his family. He stops pranking entirely once one of his pranks almost kills Pops, but he returns to defend the park from the attacking East Pines forces in the episode Prankless. While he starts off the series as a total jerk to nearly everyone in the park, he does form a close bond with Mordecai and Rigby, as first shown in the episode Trucker Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, that's where I'm gonna have to call it for positive aspects. Muscle Man is consistently rude and obnoxious throughout the entire series. The smallest things can set him off, like getting soda spilled on him. His outbursts tend to turn violent, and because he's also very strong, they can cause immense damage. Such as when he takes on an entire SWAT team because he thinks the fake lottery ticket Mordecai and Rigby gave to him for his birthday was real. At least he's generally on the side of good, but this guy definitely has some major issues. Next we have our favorite intern slash KGB spy, Thomas, or should we call him Nikolai. Thomas made his first appearance in the half-hour special, Exit 9B, posing as an intern for the park. He He risks his life to help the park workers defeat GBF Jr. and saves the park by signing the form just in time. From that point on, Thomas usually plays the role of an oblivious but level-headed intern who tries to be helpful to his co-workers. This goes on until the episode The Real Thomas, when we discover that he's a Russian spy who's been fooling everyone since the beginning. He participates in a plot to steal the park, as well as several other parks, off of American soil and take it to Russia, which would leave the park employees in a forced labor camp for the rest of their lives. After airing his frustrations at how badly the park workers treated him as an intern, Thomas thankfully realizes that they do see him as their friend and betrays his comrades to save the park. After this, he becomes a fugitive of both Russia and the US, but is able to go into hiding. While he definitely has a good heart, this dude has broken international law several times in service of his country, so he's gonna have to live out his days in the gray area. We're going to place the Guardians of Eternal Youth next. These giant floating babies with magic rattles made their first appearance in Free Cake, where their actions are downright awful. They force Skips to perform a spirit dance every year on his birthday to maintain his immortality. But when their ritual is interrupted by Mordecai and Rigby, they take Skips to their dimension and try to remove his immortality. What the H, guys? Don't you need Skips to take down Clark Bane? And isn't he your friend from high school? Why are you forcing him to do this ritual in the first place? It seems very arbitrary. Well, after that episode, some of their next appearances show them in a better light. They show up in both Exit 9B and the series finale to help take down the respective villains, though they are wiped out of existence during the latter like most of the characters. In the end, while they supposedly represent the good side, their actions don't always reflect that position. The owner of the park and Pop's adoptive father, Mr. Mallard, is next. Mallard is a grouchy old man who can't even be bothered to learn the name of his most valuable employee. He yells at Benson about as often as Benson yells at Mordecai and Rigby, and he runs his business with an iron fist. It does come back to bite him in the episode Benson Be Gone, where he gives Benson's job to a far more strict park manager who ends up turning into a giant Godzilla monster and nearly kills Mallard. However, as we find out in the ice tape, he has done a lot of good regarding raising his son. He witnessed Pops fall from the sky while on a meteor mining expedition and adopted the alien baby after reading the scroll that explained his destiny. While he had wanted his son to be able to live a normal life on Earth, he realized that Pops will have to face his destiny and defeat Anti-Pops to save the universe. And on one final heartwarming note, he tells his son that while he may not have been Pops' real father, Pops was always his real son. Overall, we have to say that while he's a morally corrupt businessman, he is a good dad, and that's enough to land him just out of the bad territory. And the award for most violent anger outburst goes to Starla. She first appeared in the episode Muscle Woman, which shows Muscle Man emotionally distraught after Starla dumped him. Mordecai, Rigby, and Fives decide to help Muscle Man out of his depression with little success, so they decide that they have to get Starla to take him back. When Starla catches feelings for Mordecai almost immediately, the trio come up with a plan for Mordecai to date Starla and then dump her so she'll go crawling back to Muscle Man. This plan goes terribly wrong and sends Starla into a wave of fury and destruction that would make Benson blush. She nearly destroys the entire park and throws a boulder at a helicopter. There's no way anyone survived that. At least she's a good, loving girlfriend to Mitch, well, except in that episode The Longest Weekend, where she tells him not to call her for the whole weekend or she'll dump him. But then she actually does want him to call her, and the two of them turn into giant fireballs. Yeah, that episode is a mess. But hey, she does cheer up her boyfriend by telling him it's what's on the inside that counts when he feels self-conscious about his bald spot. Starla really doesn't have that many positive aspects to speak of. Hopefully she'll calm down and be a good mother to her many muscle kids. And rounding off our gray area, we have Death. Based on the legendary Lemmy of Motorhead, Death is the Grim Reaper of the show who takes way too much pride in his work of killing people. He has a borderline obsession with taking people's souls and loves counting the days to when he knows people will die, especially Muscle Man, whose soul Death tries to take twice. Though his line of work is not especially nice, we have to admit that Death is honorable. He always keeps his word when making deals, like when he arm wrestles Skips for Rigby's life. He also shows up to defeat the demons in Exit 9B, and he participates in the battle against Anti-Pops, but that's probably because he doesn't want anyone else to steal his job. Strangely, Death is killed by Anti-Pops, along with the rest of the characters in the series finale. What happens when Death dies? Who takes his soul? Does he even have one? Anyway, that concludes our gray area, and now we move into the villains of the show. These are the bad and the evil. Starting our list of bad guys is rival park manager Gene the Vending Machine. Can you believe that this guy used to be the park's biggest threat? Gene first appeared in Prankless, where he nearly destroys the park twice during the Great Prank War. Gene had apparently been waiting for the day that Muscle Man was no longer a threat to revitalize the prank war, and on that day, he returned with a vengeance. The episode shows East Pines ruthlessly attacking the park with Gene at the center of it all until Muscle Man returns to scare Gene into never pranking the park again. Gene doesn't stay true to this, as in a future episode, Thomas Fights Back, he steals the statue of the park's founder, prompting Thomas to create a plan to steal it back. Benson and Gene do reconcile in the episode Park Manager's Lunch, when Gene shows his respect for Benson by inducting him into the park manager's lodge, but Gene remains a cheater and a scumbag for the rest of the series. Though he does join the Galactic Park Rangers to face off against Mr. Ross, we can assume this is because Gene is at least reasonable enough to realize that he too will be killed if Ross's plan succeeds. Next up are the animatronic criminals, the Capicola Gang. They made their debut in the episode Fuzzy Dice, where the park workers try to win a pair of fuzzy dice for Pops' birthday. After winning 1 million tickets at the Fun Zone, the group finally earns the dice, but they're shocked when the animatronic performers jump off the stage, steal the dice, and drive away in a car that was hanging from the ceiling. Later on, it's revealed that 10 years prior, they pulled a heist on a jewelry store and made off with millions of dollars in uncut diamonds. They had hid the diamonds in the dice and waited for the statute of limitations to run out, which just so happened to be the day that the park workers won the dice. The gang then gets into a shootout with FBI agents who have to subdue the animatronics with a literal minigun and RPG. But the gang survives this encounter and returns in another episode to seek revenge against Mordecai and Rigby, where another shootout takes place. Talk about tough to kill. Now we move on to the other Russian spy in the show, Natalia. She poses as Benson's girlfriend while Thomas is infiltrating the park, and she carries out her orders to steal the park for the Russian government. Though Thomas doesn't want to hurt any of the park workers, Natalia receives orders to execute the lot of them and tries to do it without mercy. While she is simply an agent and not the one calling the shots, she carries out each order with enthusiasm and has no problem killing innocent people, so she's earned her spot this far down the list. One of the more notable one-off villains, Susan the park manager, is next. Susan is the main antagonist of the episode Benson Be Gone, who takes Benson's job after Malyard demotes him. She fires Benson after he adopts Mordecai and Rigby's slacker attitude and begins overworking the park employees to the point that they turn into Susan clones. Later, Benson returns to the park, finds out what she's done to the workers, and helps return them to their normal selves. Susan becomes enraged at this and reveals her true form, a 50-foot demonic park manager monster thing. Thankfully, she's taken out by a hobo named Leon before she can drop a skyscraper onto the park workers. She returns in Exit 9B, where she becomes one of the many victims of the giant duck's martial arts skills. Good riddance. Up next are our favorite giant bearded faces, JBF and JBF Jr. Garrett Bobby Ferguson was introduced in the episode High Score, where he faces off with Mordecai and Rigby in the arcade game Broken Bones. He tries to cheat in order to keep the universe record for the high score of the game, but he loses anyway and becomes so angry that he explodes. Yeah, this show is pretty strange sometimes if you haven't already noticed. JBF's son apparently doesn't take this well and decides to destroy everything that Mordecai and Rigby love to earn his father's approval. His method of doing this is putting all of the park workers under mind control, building a freeway over the park, and raising a ton of the previous villains of the show from the dead. While these actions are undeniably evil, neither of the GBFs actually have a body count despite raising an army of villains, so we can't place them any lower on the list. The bronze medal of evil goes to Clorkbane the Destroyer, who starts as a simple high school bully who uses fear and violence to dominate the school. But things quickly take a turn for the worse once he fights Walks during prom. During the fight, he sends his mace into the wall, dropping rubble on top of Mona, who sacrificed herself to save Walks. Afterwards, he is punched so hard by the fists of justice that he's sent into orbit and will return in 157 years for a rematch with Skips. Not only is he responsible for Mona's death, but in his other appearance, he kills one of the Guardians of Eternal Youth, who are his brothers, by the way. Without flinching, he vows to destroy them all once they refuse to let him rule on the council. Luckily, Mordecai and Rigby give him another sucker punch, presumably sending him away for 157 more years. Now, our silver medal, our runner-up for most evil, is going to Anti-Pops, and I know putting the embodiment of pure evil in second place probably seems out of place, but hear us out. One could definitely argue that Anti-Pops has been cursed by fate. He was born to ultimately face his brother in a battle of good and evil, but he didn't choose to be the evil one. Though he definitely does his share of evil actions, he doesn't seem to have any motivation for what he does besides the fact that his very nature determines that he's evil. Only Pops seems to truly understand that his evil twin has the capacity to be good, and all he really needs is a hug from someone who cares about him. In his final moments, Anti-Pops regrets everything that he's done as he and Pops fly toward the sun and perish to spare the universe from another one of their destructive battles. Okay, but let's talk about why he's all the way down here. Anti-Pops has no care for any living thing other than himself. He uses his powers to erase sections of the universe with ease, and he's completely bent on destroying everything in existence. He tries to manipulate Pops into letting his guard down so he can kill his twin before he becomes powerful enough to battle yet again. According to Earl's tattoos and Lolland's Hall of Tapestries, the twins have engaged in the same battle dozens of times, and Anti-Pops kills all of the main characters in his final attempt to destroy the universe. And on top of that, he gives 1-star reviews to restaurants that he hasn't even eaten at. What a heinous and despicable crime. But finally, the honor of gold medal of most evil character on regular show goes to Mr. Ross. Ross began as Mordecai and Rigby's high school science teacher, as well as the school's volleyball coach. When Rigby distracts the volleyball team during the state championship so they lose the match, Ross becomes so infuriated that he plans on using a time machine to go back and win the game, then take revenge on Rigby. Wait, if he goes back to win the game, why does he need revenge on Rigby? He's just being vindictive at that point, but that doesn't even compare to the rest of his plan. When Mordecai and Rigby try to complete his time machine, they end up leveling the science lab and creating a tornado that tears apart the very fabric of time and space. Ross plans to harness this power to destroy the universe and everything in it, and then live out the rest of his days alone. All because Rigby ruined his chance at the volleyball championship for 1 year. Dude, you're a coach. You will have many more opportunities to win state. During his quest to destroy the universe, Ross manipulates future Mordecai into joining his side and tries to kill present Mordecai just to torture Rigby. However, future Mordecai sacrifices himself to save his past self. Ross actually gets closer to destroying the universe than Anti-Pops does, as we can see Father Time deteriorating right before Rigby's eyes. As it turns out, all Rigby needed to do to stop Ross's incredibly sadistic plan for revenge was apologize to him. He still goes to jail for smuggling plutonium into his science lab, which poses an incredible danger to all of the students. Because of his incredibly insignificant motivation for destroying the universe, I genuinely believe that he is worse than Anti-Pops. Though the timeline where Mordecai and Rigby created the Time-Nado was erased, it's safe to say that Ross is truly the most evil character in all of regular show, since he planned to wipe away space and time over losing a game of high school volleyball. But let us know in the comments section if you agree, and let us know who you think the most evil character on regular show is. And you know who subscribed to Wicked Binge and hit that notification bell? My mom. Make sure to binge our Good to Evil playlist where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite shows, cartoons, and movies. And as always, stay wicked.